Welcome, everybody, back to the Dr. Nobody podcast. I am so happy that you came back to listen to the next episode. The next couple episodes are going to be amazing. And then we follow up with guest episodes, which are even better than my episodes. So today we're actually going to go into the life of Dr. Nobody. I really want to set up this entire podcast with these next couple episodes, which we'll be talking about my life, not from birth, joking aside, haha, but actually as early as junior high. Oh no, actually, I think even grade school, I have some things that I want to talk about all the way up to, I guess, till now. There's a lot of my experiences that have led to my success, but I got to tell you, there's a lot of things that I've been through that have been pretty rough. There is one caveat. It's a little awkward, but upon preparing for this episode, I realized it's way too long. So I'll be splitting this episode in half. So you'll get this week, you'll get the first half, and then next week you'll get the second half. Yeah, it's not a big deal, but I kind of leave you in suspense if you're listening to this week by week. If you're binge listening, well, congratulations, you get it right off the bat. So let's get things started. Let's talk about the background of first. As I mentioned, I started this podcast so I can share my story and stories of others, okay? The first couple episodes are going to focus on me so you can learn more about me and why you're even listening to me. Why do I matter? Well, that's the point. I'm a nobody. That's why I matter. Really, at the end of the day, when you listen to all these episodes and hopefully the entire season, you really will understand how a nobody like me and a nobodies that I'm going to interview went from a nobody to a somebody, which is my catchphrase, my catchline, whatever you want to say. My story embodies this, and it's really important to understand that. I've experienced immense adversity, suffering, impasses, whatever negative word you want to add that are related to hardships. I've also experienced many successes. I've been blessed in every direction possible, but through it all, if I had let any of these hardships affect me or let it take over my life, I would be a failure to myself, to my family, and to many, many, many more. Actually, I might not even have met my wife, who really just changed my life. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more later in the episode. I'm about to tell you my story. I've never really opened up this way of my entire story like this. Yes, my wife has heard most of it. There are just some little tidbits here and there that she's never heard of. But I'm really opening up and I'm showing you my life, or I'm letting you listen to my life. I hope you listen well, and at the end of the day, understand why I needed to tell this story to you all. So sit back and enjoy the episode. So I definitely will sit here and tell you that my life has been terrible. But I am sure, and I'm not trying to say try to compare. I'm sure there are others out there that have had it way worse than I have, but it's my story, and like I said in other episodes, I hope they come in on this on my podcast and talk about it. I want to talk to them. I talked to my family about it, and my sister, telling her about what this episode was about, put it pretty frankly and said, if we were actually famous people, we would have the most tragic story ever, and they would make a movie out of it. You'll see. It is pretty tragic. I know for a fact there are other situations a lot more difficult than mine. I know these people. I know them. But this is my story. I would love to have you on my show, like I mentioned. And my story is just one of the nobodies. So please, let's share them. My story starts in grade school. I was bullied. And, I grew up during the 90s, and bullying was kind of a trademark in growing up, and a lot of movies were made from it. I mean, look at Mean Girls, right? And it kind of stopped when I was in college, kinda, but bullying never really goes away. It just changes its ugly face. I was really bullied because of my Hispanic heritage in a predominantly Irish school. But what didn't help was that I was a super nerd and geek, as I've mentioned before, and I'll always mention and talk about, and it's even on my website. That just didn't help. Back in the day, if you were a nerd like that, oh my goodness, you would you would get beat up like I did. You get spit on, made fun of, whatever it is. But now it's so nice. Nobody thinks twice about that. I mean, look at people dressed up as anime characters to school. Like, no one cares anymore. But back then they did. And playing games, video games also was kind of shunned. Yeah, I was definitely weird. I would think I was on the smarter end. I was definitely not an A student. I could tell you right now, I was not that kind of smart. I was definitely high, like B's ish, after I took a bunch of beatings from my dad to really, set up my grades straight. And I was definitely a teacher's pet. I admit it. So I definitely was asking for it, but not to condone any type of bullying. Definitely, these are things people hate in general, but it was my only release. I had it tough, and bullying did not help it. So one specific bullying incident that I remember when I was grade school, it's never left my mind. It really impacted me. It was this kid called Dennis, and he had his friend, which was a girl, and I think maybe they were boyfriend girlfriend, but I don't know. We were like second, third grade, whatever. I can't really remember. But they were really mean to me. They picked on me a lot. I remember being put in a garbage bin, like just literally picked up by both of them and just dumped in a garbage bin. It's like a movie, but it really did happen. Eventually, after all this time and going through the months in school, I befriended a kid, and I say kid because he was still a little bit older than me, so he wasn't like an adult, but he had the same name as me, not Doctor Nobody, but my real name. And eventually, we became friends, and I told him about my issue. So he was 3 years older than me, and one day he saw that the kids were bullying me again. So he went up to the kid, the boy, and just shoved him into the ground and started yelling at him and the girl and told him to stop. And they went crying home. Oh, it was such a great day. I was satisfied. I was so happy. Revenge was mine ish. But the next day, we were called into the principal's office, and I was a good kid. I was terrified, like literally threw up, I think, that day. I was just so scared. And what happened was the kids' parents, the kids that were bullying me, told the principal what happened, and my friend unfortunately got suspended. I remember how mad he was. It was not fair. And then the kids, the bullies, nothing happened to them. That's how it goes, right? Like in our society, it's just, and wait until I tell you other stories what happened in my life, like actual just crazy stories that no one got in trouble for. But whatever, the bullying got worse. I stayed strong, got older. I was a small kid. I was short. I was very skinny. I was athletic. I did play soccer, eventually football and volleyball, all the sports. But I wasn't a big kid. So yeah, there you go. So whatever. The one funny thing about bullies is, and not saying all bullies, there was a moment in my life where I went out to a party with my friend, and her and I were both teachers at the time, and we got invited, and all these people that used to make fun of us and whatever. It was a friend of mine. I liked him. He wasn't really a bully to me, but there were other people that were. I just look at them like, oh my goodness, they're so hot. Like all these people are so good looking. And then not to judge my friend, but we were both definitely not hot or attractive. I mean, not that we're ugly, but just not like them, like just straight up looking supermodel-ish. And then we found out that these people didn't really have the kind of jobs we did. So, like careers, they had odd jobs. Not saying that it's a bad thing. Okay, don't chastise me. I'm just saying that I felt more fulfilled, her as well, that we focused on our careers, and at the end of the day, after all the issues that we went through, we made it out. We succeeded. We have it a little bit better than they do. I hope the best for them, but hey, survival of the fittest, right? We survived all those beatings and bullying, and we made it out. It's great. It's fine. Moving on. That's just one example. I mean, there's so many examples. I mean, I've been jumped. I've been beat up. I've been made fun of. Just a lot of stuff. It is what it is, right? It does originate some of the bullying because of being a minority, but not always because of that. I'm not saying that, that's the focus, but it exists, right? So another thing, Opportunities for minorities didn't really exist like how it does now. And there's a program I'm going to talk about specifically in a moment, but they just didn't exist. So that's why, as I'll mention in episodes, I really didn't want to go to college. And it's because I didn't have it. There was no opportunities for me, whatever. And who succeeded as a minority back in the day? Now there is. There's so many, and it's really great to see that success goes all at every spectrum. So it's really wonderful. When I did get into college, eventually, I that did really give me a letdown of just not having those opportunities until I did find a program that was catered to minorities, and that was the McNair program. And the program director of the McNair program will be on this podcast. She's an amazing woman, and she really set me up for my career. But you know, the program was designed specifically to take minority students and help prepare them for terminal degrees like a PhD. So when I discovered this, I totally capitalized on it. I mean, I I just took advantage of every opportunity that program offered me, and I made amazing friends that I'll be bringing on this podcast. I've known for over 10 years, so it's great and great opportunity. We're going to talk about programs later too. One final barrier that I want to talk about is it's the it's the loss of loved ones. When I was in high school, my mother was pregnant with my first sister, and unfortunately, she didn't survive. She passed away a couple weeks in the ICU after birth. She was premature, but she just didn't have a proper renal system. So what that means is essentially she poisoned herself. She couldn't pee. So she went from the size of a hand, like a little, like not even like a palm of your hand, to the size of your arm. And it was just so hard to watch that progress. And my mother was just destroyed about it. And the reason being is there's basically four boys. It was my dad and me and my two brothers, and then her. She wanted a girl. She wanted a girl in the house, and luckily, eventually, my sister now was born, and she was so happy, and it was great. But that was my first brush with death, and it really sat on me really hard. But that's just one story. Another story. My father was a strong man. I mean, like physically strong. He was a manly man, taught me everything on how to be a man, a gentleman, a hard worker, the works. Just loved to do that. He was a loving man. He was great. I just learned so much from him, and a lot of people did as well. My uncles that were the same age as him just respected him so much. Just when he entered the room, just grabbed respect from people. The quote he always instilled in me, just the gist of it is, I want to give you everything and all the opportunities so that you can succeed and be better than me. He was a truck driver. He wanted me to be more than a truck driver, so that essentially he said, so that I can be with my family and cherish it. There were nights and days that I wouldn't see him. He was just always traveling, or he would go early in the morning or whatever. He really just wanted me not to be stressed about money or if there would be food on the table. That's why he focused so hard on education with me and my siblings, how important it was to just get to the top so that I would have better opportunities. Yeah, we definitely did not have a lot of money, but my parents managed to give us what they could. They just gave us all the opportunities they could possibly do. And my father, as I said, was strong, but also full of pride. That's what was his downfall. What we didn't know was my father was sick, and I think sicker than he thought. I started to notice that he had been in the bathroom longer than usual and just looked in pain. Pale sometimes, it just didn't eat. He was a huge guy, like just strong. He was a football player, amateur, not professional, but was really tall and strong. So it was just so weird. And after being very forceful at that time, I was doing more of the sciences and I was just getting all these vibes from him. And I just told him, and he was diagnosed with colon cancer. It was devastating for the whole family, not just us, beyond our family. It was basically close to a death sentence at that time. So after battling with the cancer for years and chemo, he beat it. He beat it. He totally got it. And it gave us a couple more years with him, before it came back, but super, super aggressive. I remember staying in the hospital overnight with him to make sure he was okay and help him when I could. But I'm going to ask you a question. Do you understand what it's like to help your strong and courageous and loving father that you've respected all your life, that is barely over 40 years old, to the bathroom and to help him go? Yeah. And then change him. People just don't really, or will never really understand what that does to someone. The images and just that burden, on your heart of seeing this. And I'm sure it wasn't easy for him as well, because it wasn't just me; it was also my mother and other people that would come and help. Um, it really scars me to this day. It's really hard to talk about, but it was a low and hard moment of my life, especially the day he died. I stayed that night with him overnight, and my family came by in the morning to swap. Just they would wake me up. I was on the chair, and they would take over. A lot of people came to see him, and I had spoken to him and my mom, and they both convinced me to go home. Like, I was just tired, so there was a lot of people there. So at that time, we were staying at my grandparents because unfortunately my father was fired from his job because he couldn't work anymore, which I'm pretty sure is super illegal nowadays. But, at this point, we really can't do anything, I guess. So we were staying there. So my uncle took me home, and I just fell asleep. I was just so tired. It's really hard, because my dad had to go to the bathroom multiple times in the night, so it's just hard to sleep. So I fell asleep, and I just remember this immense darkness surrounding me in my sleep. Just came over me, and I know it's weird. You're probably thinking I'm being dramatic, but I'm telling you, I remember these things because these traumatic events in your life, and I'm sure if you have experienced them, you remember them by detail. And I do too. I remember it. I just remember so clearly. And then I just woke up, and it was because he had passed away. And I didn't know it at the time. My uncle had already come into the room to start to wake me up, and he had told me he had passed away. It just came all full circle for me, but it was utterly devastating, just devastating. So we drove to the hospital, and that place was a good 20-30 minutes away from my house. We definitely made it in 10 minutes, probably even less. I ran into the room, and everyone was crying. Everyone. My mom was hovering over my father, and she looked me right in the eyes. I dropped to my knees. I sat over him, and my mom almost lunged at me. She yelled at me. She said why I wasn't there. Why did I leave? She blamed me. She blamed me for his death. Blamed me for me not being there, supporting her. I honestly really don't know why I had to leave, actually. They did ask me to and kind of force me, but just why wasn't I there? It really hurt. And, my relationship with my mom, I wouldn't say has always been the best, but it really hurt at that time. My dad and I were extremely close, like very, very close. I shared with him everything. This was the man I would call when I get good grades or I did really good job or a customer would tell me something nice or he raised me, he taught me everything, and he taught me how to be close to God. That was the most important thing to me. He showed me the way, and it destroyed me for a very, very long time. I fell from God. I fell from a lot of people. I went into a very dark place. But why was more devastating than what it seems, a passing of a parent? Well, I was a junior in college at the time, so I was 1 year away from graduation, so he didn't get to see that. My sister was only 5 years old, so she's the youngest of my siblings. I have two other brothers that are older than her. And I knew my life was never going to be the same again. I had to take the mantle of the man of the house and raise my siblings and all three of them while supporting my mother as well. I was okay with doing that. I just knew that I I wasn't going to have the same life again. I wasn't going to enjoy the life that other college students or 20-year-olds do. While I was working at Kane, which I'll talk about in the next episodes, I was working on a new drug for colon cancer, and it showed a lot of promise. And I remember so many times I kept telling my dad, "Just be patient. I'm working on it. It'll be great. It'll help treat you." I just needed more time, and it was time that I didn't that he didn't have, and I knew that drugs like that would take decades. Like I knew it, but just hope it destroyed me. I'm sorry if I'm choking up a little. It's just hard. For the next couple years, I lived a devastated life. I hid that from a lot of people. I really never let anyone in. I hid it from the world. I just lived that life, and I just showed everybody I was fine and happy, but I really, really wasn't. I was in a very dark place. No one understands what you go through when you lose a parent like that at young age. And I'm sure my sister or my siblings have other points of views because they were younger than I, and it just sucked. No matter what people say to you when you lose someone, like offering to help and be supportive, it's to be honest, let's be honest here, it's a lot of empty promises. It's really good for maybe for a couple months, but then after that, you kind of on your own, and it's okay. Like it's totally okay to do that. It's you get stronger, whatever, but that's how it is. It's how it is. Always family first for me. Always my siblings and my mom. Um, I did take the role as head of the household. I got a good job. I had a good job. I finished college. I helped raise my siblings, specifically my sister and my younger brother, because they're at that time there were 5 and 9 or 10 or something like that. I don't remember. My other brother, so he's 4 years younger than me, so like 17, 16, something like that. But I graduated college. I didn't get into grad school, which was the PhD program. And we're going to talk about that in the professional episode, so about my career. I did get a job at Columbia, so it was a little better job for a couple years, and it was a great opportunity. And then after that, it was a grant, so it was only for a couple years. Another opportunity, a great opportunity, showed up to teach at this Christian school, and I took it. And that's where I met my wife. It's it's very cliche to say, but she totally changed my life, and that's how I knew she was the one. I knew she was the one really early on. I had a girlfriend during all the time with my father and everything that happened. Long term, I think it was almost 5 years, and at no point did I ever think about marrying her or any more than just a girlfriend. When I met my wife at that time, I know she's going to listen to this and you're probably like, you're just saying it. But she could, if I bring her on, she'll tell you. I literally told her, I'm dating you because I want to marry you. I'm going to marry you soon enough. And yeah, we eventually did. So yeah, happy. We've been happily married 6 years plus. So it's good. She really the thing is that my wife really helped reshape me. Like she found what was wrong with me and helped make it better. And I did open up to her eventually about everything that's happened and my father's passing. And don't get me wrong, no matter what the situation was with me personally, I still found ways to help people and love people and care for them. I worked hard, but I was always broken behind those. I never let anyone in until her. So she definitely just took everything I had and just made it better. And she also helped me regain my faith, which really strengthened our relationship and helped me become better than I ever was. So yeah, we eventually got married. I eventually got into the PhD program. Yes, I got in, but 5 years later, I was definitely ready and more mature. Just a side note. So the day I got the acceptance letter, from Rutgers, I just completely broke down in my wife's arms. I was just bawling. We were just watching TV and I opened it up and I was like, no way. I had been rejected 12 times previously by other universities. And at that time I was working at it was hard at my post back with at Columbia. It was great where I was teaching with my wife. Well, she was taught little kids, I taught the high school. Um, but it was a lot of time and effort there, and it really I helped a lot in that lab. And my supervisor that trained me at that time was just a blatant racist. I mean, he would tell me in my face, like just straight up in my face, and no one did anything. Nothing ever happened to him. And despite that, I still respected everybody in him, and I did my time. I helped out. Basically, why it was more devastating was I had applied to grad school and I reached out to that professor to write me a letter's recommendation. So I had reminded him multiple times as the deadlines came to please, write the letter, write the letter. So over 3 months, 10 attempts. And then finally, the week before, I get a call from my program coordinator at Columbia and tells me, "Hey, you're applying to grad school, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." "Well, he's not writing you a letter of recommendation. He says he's too busy for that." I was so pissed. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" I gave him 3 months notice and I literally gave him what to write, what to put on the letter of recommendation. Why? They just never gave me a reason. And I knew he was just a jerk. That's the type of people I had to deal with. And he was an immense prick. I was super mad, but my friend and mentor that I had for many years and still now, he'll be on this podcast talking about mentoring. He believed in me and he wrote a letter of recommendation like a day or two, and helped me get that, saved me and helped me get into Rutgers. So I applied to 13 schools. I got rejected to 12, and the 13th one that I finally got was Rutgers. I got in. And my whole life flashed before my eyes, just knowing what I had been through just to get to that point. And it was finally the start of something so great. I was so freaking excited. What I didn't know was I was going to be tested, and it was going to be another rough patch, really rough, one that would devastate me to this day. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope there's some insights that you can gain from it. At the end of the entire double episode, I will go over some highlights for you. But I hope you're really excited just about your own passions, and I hope I'm driving something in you, because this is the beginning of becoming a someone, but specifically the someone you always wanted to be. In the next part, we're going to talk about the second half of my story. So my graduate experience, my what happened in my life at that time, and then my career experience right now. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please do give me a like, review, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also visit my website, thedrnobodypodcast.com, to learn more about this episode, to learn about some of the guests that I'm bringing on, share this episode, and much more. There's stuff to do on there. Thanks again for listening to the Dr. Nobody podcast, where we turn nobodies to somebodies. Talk to you all very soon.